In 1492, the Spaniards came here with the idea that they were finishing up a reconquista. Against whom? Against Moors, who were Africans, who spoke Arabic, right? But lived on the Iberian Peninsula. And they were the overwhelming majority on the Iberian Peninsula for 700 years. And they were living alongside another very large population called the Sephardic Jews. As a matter of fact, the Jewish world today is divided into two groups of Jews, the Sephardim and the Ashkenazi. The Ashkenazi speak Yiddish, the Sephardim speak Sephardim. So, when you look at these names like Perez and Lopez and any name that you may have that ends in a Z, if you turn it into an S, it's a Sephardic Jewish last name. Mendez, Lopez, Perez. I will show you it's a Sephardic name. Many of us, the forebears of the conquerors that came here, were Sephardic Jews, as well as many were Muslims who were Moors, because they came to escape. But anyhow, I'm not going to go into it. What I'm going to go into is the Spaniards begin to see the conquest of the America within the context of their continuum in terms of the Reconquista. So, the first thing they did was to proclaim that the problem with the natives is that they had the wrong religion. First, the argument was, well, can we conquer them? Because, you know, we have a right to. And then the Las Casas says, no, you don't have a right to do that because these people have a soul. They have not denied the existence of Christ. Now, the Jews have denied the existence of Christ. The Muslims have denied the existence of Christ as a savior, not the Indians. So you have no right to conquer them. Well, the Spaniards came up with a very interesting idea, and they issued something called the Requerimiento, which was a document which had to be read to the Indians in Castilian. And then they said, we have come in the name of the Queen of the Catholic monarchs of Spain. We have come to bring you, obviously, their protection. If you accept the kings of Spain as you become their loyal subjects, and you accept Christianity, then we don't have any problems with you. If you reject it, then you got a problem. Now imagine, you're at an Indian village, and I'm reading this to you in Castilian, and you speak Arawak. In a few minutes, what are you going to do? You're going to walk away. That was your mistake. Now this is the theory of holy war. So, but I just want to establish, not the theory of holy war, I want to establish the idea that religion was the first obstacle. And that lasted for a long time. How do we justify the bringing of the African slaves here? Well, we need to make them Christian, and we make them slave, and then in heaven they will be saved. We're saving them. They should be so grateful that they can give us their labor, their land, and their resources, and then we reward them in heaven, right? So religion is the first excuse we use. First attempt to justify racism. The second one we will use will be in the 19th century, right after Darwin publishes his theory on evolution. Now we begin to apply the theory of evolution to the human context. Oh, we got it. White people have bigger brains than all these other people. And so then you put, they used to have these little things where you begin with all, how to explain the theory of evolution. You begin with some little fish, and all of a sudden you see a monkey. Next to the monkey you see a black person. Actually, originally it was the Tasmanians. The Tasmanians were the worst. And then you have the black, and then you go on all the way. The whites are the highest. That's the theory of eugenics. And that served well until the Second World War. So now you have a theological formulation, a scientific, pseudoscientific formulation, and then Since then, we have begun to use, obviously, the justification of culture. How do we justify how we treat the Muslims? They are the enemies of Western. They hate Western civilization. They mean to destroy it, and we have to destroy them. That's what the Islamic phobic positions that are positive. So you've had three justifications for modern colonialism under the rubric of racism. But I said, in many ways, we are totally in a society that has so well articulated hegemony. We are all products of a psychological conditioning that makes us have some elements of racism every day. But for white people, it is the hardest. I'm sorry, because it is having to always question, how am I defending some privileges? That's the real problem. So what happened with my English teacher. And so we gotta think about it from the context of being honest about the discourse of racism. But where I want to go, and I want to end with this, is to speak about my brother from the vantage point of resilience. My brother was placed in solitary confinement in a control unit for 12 years. No prisoner in the United States has ever gone through that. That means you're placed in isolation in a cell in which all the food comes through a hole in a cell that was specially built, totally white, lights on all the time. It's called sensory deprivation. And he was only allowed to go to a little space next to the cell to do exercises 23 and a half hours for a half an hour in there. He was never able, so he would have to put his hand like this. He could never see the guard, and that's how they transported him. He would receive visits literally through a glass and a phone. Well, my brother did not decide it. He wrote to me, he says, I don't want to receive any visits, any letters, anything. But the devil is going on. And I had a lot of faith in him, and I was about to lose it. I said, this maybe something psychologically wrong now. I mean, without. But we took our chances and we didn't write, we didn't visit. About almost a year later, and we were really going crazy, he writes to me and says he wants to see me. Now, this prison is in southern Illinois, 8 hours, literally 9 hours from Chicago. And the only way you can get there is by Marion, Illinois. So I drove there and I went to visit him. And I said, why did you do this? My mother is going crazy. He says, I had to. I had to do it because the jailers wanted to impose loneliness on me. I had to learn to live with solitude. You know what you have done? You have totally changed the whole script. Solitude is what spiritual people choose to be in constant harmony with whatever spiritual force they recognize. That's why the best way to know a religion is really to study the mystics of that religion. So, my brother went and decided, then he was ready to receive us. And I'm often reminded of something that Henry David Thoreau wrote. He says, in my house in Walden Pond, he says, in my house, I have 3 chairs. 1 for company, 2 for friendship, and 3 for solitude. Think about the power of that, just that quote. And my brother from there on received visits. So there was this community organizer, an amazing man, taught my brother a lot of theories of community organizing of Salsarengue. He was a student of Salsarengue, and hadn't seen my brother for almost 20-some years. No, it was really at that time, it was the 80s, so it must have been about, had not seen him maybe 14 years. And he decided to go visit my brother right after this situation. He has a long talk with my brother on the phone. And this man comes back and calls my brother, Jen Suster, who's one of the legal advisors to Oscar, and says, I need to talk to you. So he meets with Jan, they have dinner, and he starts to cry. He says, Jan, I have traveled the world over. I have met with the Dalai Lama. I have gone to seek to understand what inner peace means. Oscar became the embodiment for me of any human being I have ever known of true inner peace. That's who my brother really is. And that's how he has guided his life. And you go visit him, and you will never think you're visiting a person. But I want to tell you a little story about my mother. My mother died from Alzheimer's. And my mother, last visit to my brother, was a very painful one. She already knew something was wrong with her. And when she returned from the visit, she was crying. My mother was a very strong woman, very short woman who never learned to read or write. She was the greatest genius I have ever met. My mother put us to sleep with reciting poems that she had learned from Puerto Rican, listening to her father, because her father knew how to read, from Joren Torres, Jose de Diego. That's how we were literally at night. She put us to sleep with those, reciting those poems. My mother raised us in extreme poverty, a single woman, 6 children. She was the best economist I've ever known. I don't know how the hell she did it, earning $1 an hour and raising 6 kids in Chicago. So my mother went, and I saw it. I said, this was devastating. And so I said, what happened? She says, I wasn't able to touch my son. I was not able to touch him. Now, one of the things about Puerto Rican mothers, one of the things about Puerto Ricans and Latinos in general, is that you always must embrace, you must always touch, you must always, I mean, the idea of touch is a powerful, powerful part of our existence. And she says, I couldn't. And so, now watch this, this is something. She had told my brother to put his hands against the glass. She put her hand against the glass and says, let's imagine that we're touching each other. His granddaughter could imagine touching my brother, and my mother couldn't. And so, I tell you this because I want you to understand sort of the very deep emotions, but I also want you to understand the incredible spirit of resilience that my brother represents. But it's not my brother. It's the Puerto Rican people. It's what we've been made out of. But it is the story of all oppressed people. I tell everyone, one of the greatest, if you want to understand resilience, and you want to get out, and you want to do away completely with the idea of transforming oppressed people into victims, study the story of the Africans in America. And all I have to do is ask you, what is the unifying element? If you listen to a samba in Brazil, or a tango in Argentina, or a cumbia in Colombia, or a bomba in Puerto Rico, or a guaracha in Cuba, or a merengue in the Dominican Republic, or the sones of Mexico, is the unifying element, is the clave. And who taught us that? The African slaves, who transformed that music into what that speaks to the African, which is a method of communication with the drums. And those sounds send messages. Imagine a people who could not, they were to forget their language, they were to forget everything. They were not a people. They were chattel. And what did they learn to do? To be resilient, to do something which I think African Americans in this country should totally celebrate, which I think is one of the best practices of educational experiences and methodology, which is black people are the only people that use the term teachable moments. And what's a teachable moment? A teachable moment is when you're in the depth of oppression, where black people couldn't even talk to each other, every second they got to bond, they use it as a teachable moment. Bell Hook, in her book Yearning, has a chapter called Home Place. And she speaks about the black domestic space as a space where black people in the Deep South, in the period of segregation, came home, and the home place, the domestic place, became a place to recover the wounds from the wounds of racism. That's a history that's passed down for hundreds of years among black people. And that is something that most of us don't think about how important that is. So I often tell people that if you watch the film, The Ten Commandments, or if you read the book of Exodus, you will see that Moses tells the Jews in Israel, gather all your possessions. But I remember seeing the Ten Commandments, and these people had all kinds of things. They had gold and silver. Now, if in 1865 you had told black people in Mississippi, gather all your possessions, what did they have? Absolutely nothing. But imagine, within a few years, black people built black churches. They built a black cultural life. They built black institutions. They built black colleges. Exactly. What other people have done that immediately out of slavery without any resources? That speaks to the resilience of the African Americans. And that speaks to the teaching of the teachable moments. But it is something that I think characterizes all colonized people. And I think, for me, what is important about my brother's work, obviously we would love and we really, really want him home. But more importantly than my brother coming home is whether we can be inspired, particularly the Puerto Ricans here in Holyoke and everywhere else, to say, what are the urgent questions that are facing this community, and what must I do to change the situation in this area? That's what my brother really loved. He would love, obviously, to come here and enjoy the company of Jose and this wonderful place. But I think my brother's life has been totally dedicated to the transformation of our reality. And I think, to me, the inspiration that I draw every day from the sacrifices he makes, from the sacrifices that Pedro Albizu Campos made, from the sacrifices that Lolita Lebron made, from the sacrifices of hundreds of years of Puerto Ricans struggling against Spanish colonialism and U.S. colonialism. What I draw from that is the inspiration that we must constantly be in struggle to transform our reality. And so I'm going to end by telling you, I already told you all these wonderful things we've done in Chicago. I just want to briefly tell you of a little initiative that we've undertaken. The last 5 years, I have been working on a concept that we call the community as a campus. And the idea is to take the schools in our community and to totally align something very simple, their curriculum. Do you know that in none of the public schools in the United States you have aligned curriculums? You begin in kindergarten or in preschool, and there's no correlation between what you learn in kindergarten and preschool, what you learn in grammar school, what you learn in college or high school. It's a totally divided, it's a horrible way to teach. So we said we wanted a device and aligned curriculum. So we took 11 elementary schools with Clemente High School, and we're aligning the curriculum of all those schools. But the teachers then are able to work on that curriculum in a way that's collaborative and cooperative. They can begin, a teacher who teaches physics or science in the high school can work with someone who's teaching preschool concepts, introduction to science concepts. They can work together to align this curriculum. We have, so that leads us to create a teacher leadership institute. We have said the students in our schools have no voice. Teachers hear them, they don't listen to them. Those students have to have a voice. The youth have to have a voice. So we're creating a youth leadership institute. I can tell you that we just did a little experiment last year. We had 6 students who come out of our community who are now at University of Illinois, at Columbia College, and at Northeastern Illinois University. These 6 students became mentors to 53 students at Roberto Clemente High School. Throughout last year, they walked them through, prepared their personal statement, made sure that they had taken their ACT and whatever they needed to do. They walked them through their financial statement. They walked them all the way through until they got them into college. Okay. You know, they were also able to harness $500,000 in grants and scholarships. These are 5 young people in our community who are doing that. We said the community must, you know, people talk about, oh, it takes a village. And I said, well, where's that village? Where's the face of it? I said, here it is. This is the face of this village. All of us are the face of this village. And we all have to make a commitment to that village. But we talk about the parents are not involved, and parents are not engaged. I say, how the hell do you expect a poor parent sometimes that doesn't even speak the language, that you come in and talk to them and tell them your son got a B? They don't know what the hell it is. Your son or daughter got a 17 or an 18 in ACT. What the hell does that mean? Let's create an environment, a cohort of parents at all levels, those parents are also engaged in an educational process that can transform their own lives. That means we begin to prepare them to be the workforce of the 21st century. Imagine if we did that in all of our schools. But imagine, more importantly, how do we measure success? And we measure success by telling kids that if you drop out, you will make $100,000 less than the person who's studying high school. And we do all with this idea that money is what determines who you will be. Why don't we use a standard that says you're going to be the best engineer, you're going to be the best doctor, you're going to be the best lawyer? How are we going to know it? Because you're going to test your skill in our community so you can build the best houses, so you can be the best engineer, so you can be the best doctor. That's what we do. That's how you transform. So what do you use to gauge success? To the degree that each of you becomes an informed citizen that is able to engage us in as agents of transformation.